You open up your email or even worse, your Google search results, and your business is just gone. Poof, like overnight, suspended, no warning. Google doesn't warn you when these things are going to happen. Um, but if this is you, you're not crazy and you're definitely not alone. Because today we are going to be going through lots of examples lives of businesses that are facing this problem currently, who have been suspended and have no idea what they did to upset the Google gods. Liz and I are moderators on the Google Business Profile Forum, and we've been doing this for years, helping small businesses. And so our goal here is to share some examples so that hopefully you can learn a bit more about what Google is looking for when it comes to keeping in line with their policies. But also, we want to take your current suspension cases that have you puzzled and see if we can help you solve them right here, right now. So we're going to put up a form here. It's really important if you're listening and watching this live to fill in this form, submit the details of your business so that later in the show, we can actually take a look and see if we can help you figure out what it is that you're doing wrong so that you can fix it. To start us off though, Liz, you said you had a really interesting case recently on the forum that I would love to go through. So can you tell us a little bit about the business that you were helping?
Yeah, this is a hairdresser. So kind of like a solo practitioner type model, but she is a hairdresser that has an LLC. And she was in Florida, but then she moved states to North Carolina. So as some people know, that when you move states, Google kind of doesn't understand what's happening because they're like, why would your business move to a whole other state? And in this case, the hairdresser, she did not have enough proof of the new address in North Carolina, in that she hadn't changed over her business license yet to the new state. And depending on what industry you're in, it's not always necessary to change over licenses right away or have, that kind of proof Google's looking for at that new address that you've changed to. But when you are moving states, it's really important that before you move your address, that you're making sure you not only have your website and citations and any other online directory updated with the new address, but you also have on hand proof from like a government body. And it's important that it be some official government body that Google's going to trust, proving that your business is now eligible to do business in this new state. So she had a bunch of other proof like photos and a video. She was able to do the video verification, but once that got approved, she got suspended right away and then was not able to get appealed or the appeal approved with the proof she had. So this is a case where the video verification worked and she was able to pass that because her new office had all of the hairdressing equipment. She had a sign and everything. But then when she got suspended, she just didn't have the proof necessary to get the appeal approved. So there's a big difference between being able to pass a verification and being able to get your appeal approved when you're suspended.
So I just want to clarify. So a hairdresser, like what kind of documentation would they even have? I mean, I know people that cut hair for a living out of their house and they are a real business, but like they don't have a business license per se. So
Yeah.
like, how does Google kind of handle that in scenarios like that?
Yeah. So this has been a case I've been helping with for a couple weeks. And she was actually able to get her LLC verified or LLC set up in North Carolina. So that was the missing piece of the puzzle there. And we actually are still waiting for Google to make a decision. So I'll be able to let you know in hopefully a week or so if this was enough to get the suspension approved. But the missing piece, in my opinion, was that the business was not registered as an LLC in the state that she was now residing in. And so she did have to update that, which required setting up that LLC documentation in North Carolina.
Yeah, I think about all those industries like, piano teachers, hairdressers, things like that, where I feel like it used to be really easy to get verified without all that. So it's becoming more challenging. You can thank all the spammers.
Yeah.
But certainly something that is frustrating to those business owners who are like, I don't need a license to operate. That's not a legal requirement, yet Google's kind of forcing you to.
Exactly.
I had an interesting case myself recently that I don't believe will get reinstated, but I thought it would be interesting to share because it is so different than one I've seen before. So this particular business was in the home services space and they're in Australia. Now, what was so interesting about this case is that Australia's government website, they have like a consumer warning section. So maybe it's like their version of the FTC or something similar, but essentially this site actually puts out like press releases and things about businesses and kind of warns people like not to do business with them. So this particular business had a warning put out, but it was different than anyone I've ever seen before, because usually when governments put out warnings saying don't do business with somebody, it's like, oh, don't do business with them because they've like scammed consumers, or there's a lot of complaints about this business and just the quality of their service, yada yada. This was different. This press release on the Australian government website actually said that this business shouldn't be trusted because of how many different websites they had. So they actually said they were misleading customers because they had hundreds of different websites kind of ranking all over the place. And they actually like mentioned Google. It's kind of wild because I'm like, wow, a government body actually talking about some SEO practice is just not something you see often. So they had this particular business like basically saying like, watch out for these guys because they have hundreds of different websites. It's all the same company. So it's kind of like, I guess, a lead gen strategy. And what was interesting about the case is that Google suspended the business listing. And the guy is like, I've tried everything, can't get it reinstated. I see that government warning. And I can only assume that they've had multiple Google listings as well. But that listing would not get reinstated. And then they went and they created a new profile, which honestly sometimes is a workaround. I've seen people do it. That new profile got suspended pretty much immediately. So they're kind of stuck in the sense that obviously this business is doing something that Google has caught on to, and also the government has caught on to, but it falls outside the norm of what I'd say we normally see on the forum. So it was definitely an interesting one.
Yeah. And I wonder if Google does take into account those types of government warnings when they're considering reinstating a business, if that's something to actually look at.
I don't know for sure, but I certainly think they should, because it's about as authoritative as it gets when it comes to official, advice. We have a question here or a comment. We had a similar situation with one of our clients. She's a painter. She moved to a new location. I got her verified. She's concerned about the old reviews. It's a service area based business and the old profile is still suspended. Can we get the reviews? Liz, how would you answer that?
Yeah, so this is actually what you kind of have to do for service area businesses when you're moving them, especially moving to another state, which you didn't mention, but anytime you're moving a service area business, there's a little known bug that could prevent you from ranking in the area of your new address. So what we've learned, and a workaround to that, is to actually create a new profile, verify it at that new address, and then contact Google support and ask them to move the reviews from that old profile to the new one, and then mark that old profile as closed. So you've actually done what we would recommend doing for a service area business, but you do have to do that final step and work with support to get the reviews moved over to the new profile.
So we have a question here. This is a good one. Why do businesses always get the suspended label that they have deceptive content?
In my experience, deceptive content typically means the address, but Google considers any information on the profile to be content. So it technically could be anything, like can say a phone number that is the same as another profile, or maybe you have service areas that are overlapping. Technically, Google would consider that deceptive content. But more often than not, you're going to want to look into the address and making sure that you can prove to Google that your business is registered and legally allowed to work at that address. But I think the reason Google doesn't just come out and say that is because they want to be a little more vague about what their actual rules and guidelines are, to ensure that no one is kind of reverse engineering to be able to spam Google Maps even more.
Yeah, for sure. You had an interesting one as well recently for a franchise business. Do you want to share that one?
Yeah. So this is similar to the previous example we had of the painter, where they actually created a new profile to try and get around like a possible suspension. So this business this is a forum user that I was helping. They had bought into a franchise and they had bought a particular location within a franchise, and they weren't able to get access to the existing profile for whatever reason. So instead of working with that and trying to get access, they ended up creating a new profile, and that profile immediately got suspended. So in this case, you do have to work with Google to either get that profile you've created reinstated. But if it is at the same address and it has the same business info as the existing profile, you're not going to be able to get that done. So they've kind of created like a trickier situation for themselves with this suspended listing. And it's not something I think Google will reinstate. So in this case, I was advising the business owner to go through the process and try to claim that profile and then verify that existing profile, because the profile they tried to create has the same info and it's never going to get reinstated because it's technically already a business that exists on Google.
Yeah, I had a similar case. I'm trying to see what kind of business this was here. It was definitely a service area business. They were a construction company in South Carolina, and Google is refusing to reinstate their profile. And so I always ask people, like, give me all the details of the listing. I checked and their phone number was associated with another live listing. And I was like, so Google's going to see the same phone number on multiple listings and be like, this is the same business.
Yeah.
I understand sometimes businesses use phone numbers across different profiles. It's a really bad idea though, because it's a good way of basically telling Google that these are all the same business. So in this case, this guy actually went and deleted the other listing because he's like, oh, it's a side gig of mine. And like, I set it up and I use the same phone number because it's a side gig. He's like, but I don't really care about it. So he went and he deleted that listing completely. And then Google reinstated the real one, or the one he actually cared about. So they certainly do look at like all of the stuff that can apply to your address as well, right? If you have the same address on multiple listings, then that would be another use case where they could refuse to reinstate it.
Yeah. And it can happen too for businesses with different names. Like if there are a lot of businesses at the same address, you're going to want to make sure you have really really good proof to send to Google that you are a separate entity and that you are able to use that address. Especially if like it's the exact same address, you're going to want to have a suite number or something that associates your business with a specific like office section at that address.
I've seen people take this to the extreme though, because suite numbers are something you wouldn't want to make up. So I certainly would not just be adding suite numbers for the sake of it. And Google does have ways of verifying, like, if it's real or not. I know the post office makes that stuff like kind of public knowledge. So I would definitely not be in the habit of making that up just to differentiate yourself. But they certainly do want a separate address. So sharing multiple listings at the same address is generally not a good idea. It's not even going to work most of the time.
No.
I think we have a comment here. He said he's been seeing that the address and the service area, if they're targeting a service area further than 2 hours, it'll be flagged. That's actually interesting because there is something in the Google business guidelines that talk about this 2-hour rule. I have never seen it enforced, like ever. So I don't even understand if it is a guideline or not. Like, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a guideline. Like, it's not a rule. It's a recommendation to basically mean that, if you're driving, who's going to want to drive more than 2 hours, which makes perfect sense. In Google's mind, a service area business is one that goes out and drives out to see their customers. And of course, there should be a limit to how far you would drive, right? So that part does make sense. But it's not. I've never seen it as an actual rule that causes suspensions because your service area is too wide. Have you ever seen that, Liz?
I haven't, and I've seen businesses set to the entire United States and they're fine. It's not, helping them at all, but it's not a reason to get suspended. And I live in a small state in Connecticut, and there are definitely businesses that are willing to drive over 2 hours across state to service customers. So if you do have like a larger service area, I think that's okay, but just be mindful that you don't want to make it too large.
Mm-hmm. I have an interesting one here that we can talk about because this was really interesting. So this is a franchise, and they're actually a pretty well-known franchise. And I'll actually share the thread if people want to reference it later, because I had a lot of really interesting advice on this one. And basically, they had 2 businesses at the same address. And Google was refusing to reinstate it. And it's because A DBA, they had like a DBA for one of them, and then they actually had the other one registered. So a DBA, this is where people get confused, is like just another name. So for example, perfect real life world example, Sterling Sky also has the brand name Local U, which we are legally allowed to use, and it's trademarked and it belongs to our company. But Local U is not a business. Like Local U is not a company. It is another name that we have the rights to use as our company. So the registered business would be Sterling Sky. Now, I can't just go create a listing for Local U on Google Business Profile. Like that would technically be against their guidelines because it's not an actual business. You won't find a registration for it. You won't find utility bills. Like don't have any of those things. All that stuff would be in either my name or Sterling Sky's name. So I was kind of explaining this to this guy. He's like, oh, I have a DBA for this other thing. And I believe it was, so one of them was a pressure washing business. And then let me find the other one. It was mobile detailing. And that's another thing to keep in mind too. Those are in like the same exact like area, like business area, right? So it's both under like automotive. That's another thing where Google's like, if it's, you could have the same customer and you're just offering two different services, they're not distinct, but they'd also have to be registered as separate businesses. So something that I think some people overlook, having a DBA does not qualify you to have a second listing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that is well known or not.
I don't think that's well known at all because I actually was dealing with a very similar case. It is a business that operates as two separate service area businesses. One of them is like a tub conversion company. So they come in and they'll convert your tub into a step-in shower. And then the other one was a dryer vent cleaning company. So two very different services. And they tried to create a second profile for the tub conversion service area company. But the trick was that it was at the same address as the dryer vent company, which had their address showing and it wasn't set to be a service area business. So the way I was able to help this business owner was I actually told them to remove the address from both profiles and then submit evidence of both businesses as separate entities. So they were able to provide enough proof for the tub conversion business to get it reinstated in the end, but they weren't aware, A, they needed to hide their address as a service area business, because one of the first things I asked was, do you have separate signage at this location for both businesses? Because if you do have two separate businesses and they are storefronts and people will come for both businesses, you need separate signage and you need to be able to show Google that. Sometimes they even say separate entrances, like physical entrances for each business. But there are very strict guidelines that Google is going to be following when you have two businesses at the same address, even if you own them. So.
Yeah, speaking of addresses, I'll go through this one here. Having a visible address if you are an SAB is probably one of the most common types of violations that this guy deleted his thread. I was going to share this thread, but he deleted it. So maybe he didn't want people to know about his suspension. So he was a business that had a service area business, and the address was currently visible. And he had a location. It was like a warehouse. So it's not like a home address, but I remember when I asked him for pictures of his signage, he gives me a photo of like, I don't even know. It was like the most clunky door. It was locked. And it's like a sign that you could potentially just like tape on. And that's the thing, like when Google says permanent signage, they're purposely looking for stuff that you can't just set up and then take down later, because people do this like all the time. I see this all the time. People will like do like pop-up shops are popular, where they'll come and they'll like decorate your office and like make it look real and then take it down. Like there was a wave of locksmiths that did this a couple of years ago. I managed to get their listing verified. So first of all, the sign is not being permanent, but also like it's a locked door. It's pretty clear that like no customers come to that location based on the type of business it was. So I told the guy flat out, I'm like, you're allowed to have a profile, but you're not a storefront. Like you can't even make an argument that you're a storefront. I was a little nicer, I think, with how I worded it. But I was like, you probably want to hide your address, and then Google will reinstate it. So he did that. Lo and behold, he got reinstated. So, something to keep in mind is like the storefront rules for showing your address. It's supposed to be that customers can show up. And if it doesn't look like customers can show up because, you're in I've seen the people do this in warehouses or like parking lots, then you're not going to get your profile verified with an address showing.
Yeah. And you'll see businesses on maps right now with their address showing, and it seems totally fine. And I don't know, I've heard of people reporting them as well, and Google won't remove them. So, like, what's really the difference between, taking down a spam listing you see live that has the address showing when it shouldn't, versus getting a profile reinstated if they were found in violation of that, and that's why the profile got suspended?
Yeah, so that's the funny thing. Getting a profile verified and getting a profile removed is different than getting like a profile reinstated or suspended. Like it is different criteria that Google looks at, different things. I would argue that it's easier to pass original verification than it is to pass a reinstatement or an appeal, because Google actually requires more information on an appeal. Like they're looking at more things.
Yeah.
Then they're looking at different things too as well, right? So it is different. It is really frustrating because they have these policies like, hey, don't show your address, yet you go on Google and you see hundreds and hundreds of listings with showing addresses that are clearly residential homes, but then you report them to Google and Google does nothing.
Yeah.
So that is the world we live in. Google's not very consistent and is one of those things that like, certainly there are ranking advantages to showing your address. So this is why people want to do it. And that is the reason why people do it, but it really isn't a problem until you get suspended. So
Yeah.
I've had businesses come to me and they have their address showing and it's hard to tell them to hide it. I'm like, well, if you get suspended, you're going to have to hide it. But until that point, I don't know. Do you want to risk the suspension? You might have a downtime if you get suspended. So there's always that risk. But the benefits to having an address are pretty high. So the best solution is to always make sure that you have like a staffed office if you can afford one, which I would say in a lot of businesses' case, they should be able to justify it if their ranking is better and their leads are better. So,
Yeah.
Give me another one that you worked on recently.
So another one that I worked on recently was a satellite office situation for a law firm. So just like we're talking about how sometimes it's worth it to invest in an office that you're eligible to show your address at. And a lot of times if you're looking to rank in a large service area, you're going to need multiple Google listings in order to do that. So in this case, this law firm had a smaller satellite office in a neighboring city to their main city. And when they created the profile, the verification went through fine. They did the video and then it immediately got suspended. So we went through all the checks to see, did you have the same phone number as the original address or profile? Did you have overlapping service areas with the original profile? Turns out they didn't have either of those. And I think this was a case that Google just didn't have enough internal information to be able to keep the listing verified, and they decided to suspend it. Because according to the user, they didn't make any edits before the suspension. It was kind of a random suspension. And I don't know about you, Joy, but I've experienced that before, especially when you create a new profile and sometimes you get a better verification method like email or phone number. In my experience, a lot of the times, a couple weeks later, you may be asked to re-verify or even get suspended, even if you didn't make any edits to the profile. So in this case, I was able to help this law firm with their appeal, but they did have to provide a ton of proof to be able to get this satellite office reinstated, because they didn't have any proof with the new address on it, because it was just like a brand new office. They hadn't set up anything there. They didn't need any like licenses to work because it was in the same state. It was just in a neighboring city. So it did take a little back and forth for them to get me enough proof that I felt confident Google was going to accept this next escalation. And luckily they did, but it was kind of more or less a burden on the business owner to provide that proof of this new office.
Yeah. And on their website, did they refer to it as a satellite office?
I don't know if they did or not.
Because why would you call your location a satellite office? Because satellite office screams virtual office. Like it is not a term you want to list if you actually have a staffed location. So Google's going to look at that and be like, that's not a real location. So I've seen them deny stuff because if it's a satellite office, by definition, you're not there all the time. It's not staffed. Customers can't show up. So you would not qualify as a storefront. I mean, don't call it a satellite office if it's not a satellite office. If it is a satellite office, then you're probably not eligible for a listing.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if they did on their website, but it was in the thread. So
okay. This is actually a really interesting one. So we got one that I'll take here from somebody who's working with a State Farm insurance agent. So not gonna lie, State Farm Insurance, for those of you that don't know, I worked with insurance agents for like 11 years at my former job, and State Farm was probably the company we worked with the most. So definitely well familiar with their company. And so actually I can give some background here. Let me screen share here. Richard, do you have the screen share up? Okay, perfect. So the way that State Farm usually does their listings is that they set them up as solo practitioners. So solo practitioners, I will tell you, are a bit of an area of Google that a lot of support agents don't even know the policies on. So normally the way that practitioner listings work is that you have a practice listing. So let's say you have a law firm, you have the listing for the law firm, and then practitioner listings would be each lawyer at that law firm is technically allowed to have a listing. So normally with insurance agents, they fall under the practitioner model as well. And they would expect that like State Farm would have a listing and then each agent would have a listing. That is not how it works with State Farm or Allstate or many other insurance companies. They are set up like solo practitioners where you have a single listing that represents both the brand and the practitioner. And that is allowed by Google's guidelines. But let me tell you, their support agents do not understand that. And the amount of times that I've had to argue with them about this is kind of ridiculous. So Mia, let's just pull up her website. This one, so I'm just going to read the notes here. They've been suspended for a year, which is wild. I would say if it's suspended for that long with a company like this well-known, it could be an account issue. So I don't know if that's something that you've tried, but setting up a new listing under a different account would be one thing I would try, because there certainly isn't anything sketchy about this brand. They certainly do not have virtual office locations to my knowledge. So I can't see any reason why that would be a problem. That being said, let me check her phone number. And I'm going to check to see as well if there are other like agents at this address, because that could sometimes be a thing as well. So let's see here. Looks like she is the only one there. Oh wait, what's this? Okay, let me take a look at Street View. So Street View is often, something that the agents at Google will look at too, right? Because it's their thing. Okay. So we've got a Street View that looks like it was taken in April that shows a different agent, right? So I'm trying to connect the dots here. This person said that this has been suspended for a year. This was taken in April of this year. So that is potentially a problem. Let me just make sure I've got the right address. Yep. Okay. So who is this Luke Deleuze guy? Let me see if I can find him. All right. That is likely your problem. So 110, let me just make sure these addresses match. Oh, it's different address. Hold on. They're literally like they're side by side, I'm guessing. One's at 110, the other is at 112. According to this sign, they are both in the same building, but one of them is signage and the other doesn't. That's weird. Very weird. I would think that this is probably the issue though. Like if I'm confused, I think Google's probably confused.
Yeah.
Like that's really strange. Also, that seems odd that State Farm would give one of them signage, not the other. But the fact that they have a listing at like, even though it's not technically the same address, it's right in the same building and Street View shows it. And then what's the phone numbers? 75. Yeah. The phone number is different. But that could be potentially why. So I don't know if I would say that the signage is going to be really key. And I would also say, like, if it's been a year, I mean, certainly I would try creating a new listing at that point. But because it could be the account thing. This is one, if you want to bring it up on the Google Business Profile community, there's a good chance that somebody there can get somewhere with Google on this. I know State Farm also has a like bulk feed that they use for all their agents as well. So Google has that in kind of internal information from State Farm that they could usually verify with. Not to mention she's got like a website that is literally on State Farm's website. So there's no doubt that he actually is an agent that works for State Farm. So there's definitely something weird going on here. But I think it's the address thing. I think it's the fact that they go in at her address, you see a different agent. That is probably what they are looking at, going, this is not correct. And then, yeah, I think that's likely the issue. So the fact that Street View doesn't show her, and it's not old and outdated. So I think you would want to get signage for her location, and like maybe even request that Street View drive by again. You could do that. I don't know how effective it is, but you can fill out a form to request that Street View gets updated. No clue if Google actually looks at that and actually sends their cars out based on that, but that would be my best guess. Anything you want to add, Liz?
Someone in the chat mentioned that she changed addresses last year in October, and that's when this situation started.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'd say definitely the address. And I think that they look at the address and they see this other agent and they're like, she's not there. So that would be the best thing. Now, I've heard of agents doing, like, not State Farm agents. I hope they're not adopting this model too, but I've heard of agents and other business types like this that have multiples, like sharing offices. It's a nightmare. So I don't know if she shares an office with the other guy and they're just using different numbers. But that's another great way to have your listings accidentally merge. It doesn't follow the solo practitioner. Like, she's no longer a solo practitioner then. So guess what? Now you have this situation with Google where you either have to have a listing as State Farm or a listing as the person, but not one that does both. So it's honestly, I would probably say go to the forum next, and I would also try creating a new listing.
Yeah.
But not until you actually have signage. Without the signage, without the showing that she's on that building, and then showing where she is in relation to this other State Farm agent too. If they are sharing an office, that's another potential problem that you're going to run into down the road, is that there's a filter. And so likely is Google is going to only rank one of them. And so she's going to be competing with that Luke guy for the rest of her life. So I don't know. It sounds like she made a really bad decision to move there from my perspective.
Yeah. Would an option be then, if she is eligible to register her insurance business at her home address, using her home address and then hiding it?
It wouldn't work because her address is on her website. And also, I believe like a lot of insurance agents actually have people show up at their office, but their corporate office would probably never okay that. They have like very strict rules. Yeah. And just to amplify what this guy's saying here, it absolutely is crucial that she has State Farm in the business name for just search visibility. I can say that with confidence. I worked with State Farm agents for many, many years. The number of people that search for State Farm is really high. They're either, moving or trying to find a new agent, or they're just, people that have heard their commercials over and over. So you certainly would want that in your business name.
Yeah. The first thing I thought, though, when we saw that Luke had a listing there is, oh, well, the local filter will come into play if you are able to get this listing unsuspended.
Yeah, no, this one's tough because I think, like, again, Street View tells that story, and that's probably what the agents are seeing. Honestly, though, if you ever have a listing that's suspended for that long, like, I would not wait that long. I would be like, okay, we got to move on and figure something out. And if you are certain there's absolutely nothing wrong with the business, then creating a new listing will be a solution if it's the account that's a problem. That being said, I think you're going to run into the same problem until you get Street View or something showing that, like, she actually exists at this address that proves it in relation to the other agent. And if she's sharing an office, I don't know if you're going to be successful because those, again, sharing an office, going back to the solo practitioner thing, violates Google's guidelines. Technically, she'd be allowed a listing, but she wouldn't be allowed to have State Farm in there. Neither would the other guy, because now there's two agents in the same office and they fall under the practitioner practice rules now. So this is a nightmare. Tell State Farm, if you talk to them, that this is a terrible idea from an SEO standpoint. I understand why it makes sense for sharing rent and things like that, but sharing offices doesn't work for SEO for this scenario. It will not work for insurance agents.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting case though. So thanks for submitting that one. Again, we'll put the form up if anybody has another one that they want us to look at live. We'd be happy to look at some others. Liz, why don't we go with one of the other ones that you have documented here that you helped with recently on the forum?
Yeah. This is an interesting one because it's not very common for this to happen. But if anyone has dealt with a suspension recently within the last year or so, they've used Google's appeals tool. So this is a tool that you use to find your profile. If you're using like an account that has multiple profiles on it, you can select the profile that's suspended. And then Google will allow you to submit your first appeal using that form. Sometimes when you use that form and you're signed into the right account, you think you're going to get a notice that says no info found, which means that Google is not finding any profile associated with your account that's eligible for any type of appeal. So when this happens, the first thing I say is, oh, make sure you're using the right account, because sometimes you're signed into like a personal Gmail versus like your work Gmail, and that's why you're seeing this. But if you are signed into the right account and you still see this no info found, the only thing you can do is contact support, and there should be a contact us button directly on the form. You're going to have to use that link rather than using any other like general help form with Google, because that link is going to get you to the team that can actually help handle your appeal situation. So I've been seeing a lot less lately the no info found, but this was one I helped with about a couple weeks ago where they saw no info found, confirmed it was the right account. They did get in contact with Google, and I was able to escalate it from there. But until you contact Google about that particular error with the tool, a product expert is not going to be able to help escalate it because you do need to go through support first.
Yeah, speaking of weird errors that happen, we should probably do a post on that, Liz, like the no info found, because as much as you say it's not common, which is not, I still get threads all the time with people that are like, the tool tells me I can't appeal this, and even though it's suspended. So certainly is a bug that impacts a small percentage of users that we should probably do a write-up on, because it's a really terrible experience to be like frustrated in that situation. I have another one that is also kind of buggy. Before I do that, I just want to do a quick shout out to the video that we are going to be doing next week. So on our YouTube channel, we're doing another live where I'm sitting down with our YouTube coach. So Jeremy Vest is an individual that I met, I think 3 years ago. He was doing a keynote at a marketing conference that I was at, and he was talking all about video. And it dawned on me that my company was pretty bad when it came to video. Our YouTube channel at the time, I think, had 100 subscribers, and we had like 2 really pathetic old videos. Please don't ever go watch them. They're really terrible. And so I sat down with him and was like, okay, I probably should start paying attention to video. And 3 years later, we have over 100,000 subscribers, thanks to Jeremy and his strategies. And while, it makes sense, we are a business type that gets customers from everywhere. We're going to be picking his brain next week about like, how does a local business do YouTube? Why would a plumber want to do a YouTube channel? Why would a dentist want a YouTube channel? What benefits, does it have for a local business, and kind of the trends that he's seeing? I feel like nobody knows YouTube better than this guy. He is fantastic. And I say that as somebody who has paid him a lot of money to teach me about YouTube. So really great event. Hope to see you guys there. And if you haven't registered, there's the link to register for that next week. All right, back to the topic of suspensions. Again, if you guys have another one that you want us to do live, fill in that form. But I'm going to go ahead with one more here that is another kind of buggy thing that shouldn't happen, but does happen every so often, which is you get a suspension, Google reinstates your listing, but all your reviews are gone. So this happens, I don't know, like a good chunk of time. And basically, this particular business, they were like freaking out because they're like, what happened to all my reviews? And people often think the reviews are like gone and they're dead. I will tell you guys, like, reviews are never gone. They're somewhere in a database. Google doesn't delete data. Like, they are a data company. They like to keep their data. Even reviews that get taken down for policy violations are still there. They're just hidden. And I remember ex-Googler telling me this years and years ago, and I was like, what? So like, they're literally still there. So what ends up happening usually is they get disconnected from the listing, and that can happen with a variety of different things, but often happens with suspensions. That is what happened here. What you need to get them back, and this is where it gets tricky, Google sometimes can't find them. Like, I'm not going to lie, a company that big should have better tools. Like, how could you lose a business? Like, I can't even wrap my brain around it. Like, but they do. And I see it happen quite often. So if you're a business owner, you're a marketer, whatever, and you're not storing like screenshots, I don't know, copies of reviews, you know, those email alerts that you get every time you get a new review, like don't delete those. Like just store them off in a folder somewhere in case you ever need them. Because in this case, this business, you know, missing the reviews, the information that I asked them for to get them back was like screenshots. I was like, do you have screenshots of any of your reviews? Do you have, and it's even better if you have a screenshot that shows that they have like the total number of reviews and whatnot, like on the knowledge panel. So I'll do a shout out to Places Scout because that's a tool we use. They take screenshots. So we never have to store this anywhere because it's all in that tool. But basically he gave me the screenshots of the reviews. I send those off to Google. Google finds the reviews, which is great because I have another thread right now where they're telling me they can't find them. And then they reconnect them to the business profile and everybody is happy. I don't know how often you run across this, Liz, but yeah, really stupid.
Oh, yeah, quite often business owners, when they get reinstated, they don't have every single review right away. Sometimes it takes about 48 hours. So I will have users tell me, oh, my profile's live, but my reviews are gone. And I do tell them, wait the 48 hours because typically they'll come back. And I haven't seen too many cases where like tons went missing and we had to actually contact Google about them. But I did have one recently where reviews were missing for, like they said, 8 months after they had been suspended, got reinstated. They never got another review posted after that. And I was able to escalate that for them and get the reviews published. So don't wait too long, though, if you find that you are missing reviews after your suspension. Luckily, this business was able to get some reviews back. I don't know how many, but 8 months is definitely a long time to wait if you're missing reviews and you're not getting new reviews posted.
Yeah, good tip. All right, we have some questions here that I want to take. Generally, submitting a screenshot of the no info found in the secondary appeal can help. And I agree. Like, I don't know why Google needs you guys and us to do screenshots so much, but they do. So yeah, that would be a really helpful thing to include when you're trying to get help from Google support. Don't assume that they see what you see because they don't.
Yeah.
Two businesses, one just closed and the other services those customers, but the company wants those customers to be served and wants to keep the GBP. Do we hide the address of the closed business or do we merge the GBPs? Oh, I have so many questions. I assume these are not at the same address. We're gonna make some assumptions here. Feel free to comment and clarify if you want. So I'm trying to get the context. The one office being closed, I guess the other office is now servicing those customers and they probably want the reviews. I certainly would not merge the listings. You cannot, actually, I shouldn't say you cannot. You are not supposed to merge listings at different addresses. I've seen a handful of times in the last year where Google support has actually done it and it completely destroys rankings. So don't do that. They're not even supposed to merge listings at different addresses, but I've seen it happen. So you definitely don't want to merge them. I would, the correct thing usually to do is to mark one as closed and then have Google basically move or mark it as moved to the other one. So just say like this location is closed down, the business is moved, this is their new address. Can you mark it as moved? And then they will move the reviews over and mark the one as closed and have it kind of forward to the other. That is what it's supposed to do. That being said, there's so much broken with this process right now that if you go to Google support, you may not even be able to get through to Google. It might send you to the forum. I've seen that lately. So we've been getting a lot of these requests on the forum lately. And I'm like, why are people coming to us to merge listings or move listings? We can't do that. But the help form might send you to the forum, in which case just post a thread there. And hopefully somebody can escalate it to Google since their support path currently is broken.
Yeah. And like Joy said, get screenshots of all the reviews in the meantime. Like, you want to have as much evidence as possible to make sure all the reviews get moved over.
Okay. So she clarified that they're both at the same address, which is interesting. I don't even know how
Oh,
that's possible. Like Google normally automatically merges those if they're at the same address. So I'm
maybe
assuming that,
different business names?
yeah, I was gonna say they must have different business names or categories.
Hmm.
So this is getting more complicated because if they're not the same business name, they're not gonna allow you to do this.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to fill or just like respond and tell us, but if there are different business names, we get this all the time with acquisitions. So we have clients that acquire other brands and then they're trying to figure out what to do with those business profiles. Liz, what's your current recommendation for that? Like if they are different names, what should you do?
Yeah, it depends if you're going through like a rebrand or something. It sounds like one business closed and another one opened, and you're not necessarily rebranding the businesses. But had you been, I probably would have tried to keep the original listing and just rebranded that because it's already at the correct address. If the phone number was changing, you can bake that in as part of the rebrand process. But essentially, you just want Google to better understand what business is actually at this location now. And the best way to do that is with your business website to make sure that Google can read that and say, oh, this business is now at this address. You can even write like a little press release saying, hey, this old business name is closed and we're now operating as this business name. And then once all of that is indexed with Google, like, it's on the website, you can proceed with changing the name on the listing and then potentially the phone number after 24 hours if that was changing as well. And if the website itself was changing too, you, I would change that first on the listing before even the name to let Google know this is the new website for this business.
Yeah, not gonna lie, like Google's really bad at understanding acquisitions and
Yeah.
what to do with them too. So like if they see business A, so like we just purchased Ranking Academy. Okay, Ranking Academy doesn't have a GBP. Let's pretend they did. Like what would I do with it, right? Well, I would probably first step is I would update it to say Sterling Sky, and then I'd let it sit for a bit. Like I wouldn't just close down the location immediately because you do that, Google's going to go and they're going to be like, well, these are two different businesses. No, I'm not going to merge or move. Sorry, I'll use the right terminology. Move one to another. These are separate businesses. So if you let it sit for a couple, like a little bit, like a month or two, and then request Google to move it after, you will be a lot more successful. I realize this is kind of a
Mhm.
fringe case, but it's definitely one that we run into with our clients because we have lots of clients that do acquisitions.
Yeah.
Um, we have a super important request here from Tim. He wants me to rate my energy drinks because he probably sees me drink them all the time on these webinars. They help me keep focused and alert. I'm a Monster fan all the way. So no, they didn't pay me to say this, but Monster, always zero sugar, got to try to keep it somewhat healthy. I realize energy drinks are probably the opposite of healthy, but yeah. Yes. And Claire, I don't think Ranking Academy has a GBP. Maybe they do. I don't even know. But if they do, I certainly do not have an operation over in the UK. So we wouldn't be keeping that one anyway. All right. We have another submission that somebody entered that I'm going to pull up here. So I'll just read off what they said. I have a lawyer client whose home base is in Austin, Texas, but he wants to branch down to San Antonio, which is quite far away, 50 miles. In order to open a new GBP, oh dear, I rented an office space Regis owned in the heart of
Ooh.
downtown San Antonio, added signage not only to the directory, but also the entrance, submitted a video, and it was approved. I didn't make any edits. I got a few reviews, but the account was suspended a week or so later. I've appealed once through the appeals tool. I've also appealed through this link, and both were denied. I've been told that Regis isn't good to use. However, the reason I picked this office is because another attorney has a verified profile there. Oh my
Mm.
goodness. Okay. I know you're going to have thoughts on this. I have to say, don't use Regis. I'm sorry, Regis. Like, I don't have anything against you, but like, they are the worst for getting listings verified. They are the highest on Google's radar when it comes to brands for virtual offices. And you also don't want a location with another attorney. We were kind of alluding to it earlier, but the filter, Google has a filter. I've written a lot about it. So I don't know if Carrie can like drag up one of my articles and put it in the comments, but Google filters out listings at the same address. So if you've got two attorneys at the same address and they're both competing for, let's say, criminal attorney San Antonio, Google's going to pick the stronger one. And guess what? If you're brand new, you are not the stronger one by default. So you're probably not going to rank. So I would certainly recommend that you get a different office, to be honest. Like, I don't think you're going to be successful at this current location. I wouldn't expect Google to reinstate this. They also are very skeptical of lawyers. Like, lawyers are on the list of like the naughty list. Like, they unfortunately have lied through their teeth for so many years to Google, and Google knows it. Anything you want to add, Liz?
I would just back up the find a new office address, even if just for the local filter. Like, say you do get this reinstated, you're not going to see the same like return on investment that you're probably expecting from this location because of that other lawyer there.
Yeah. And locations are like something that should be an SEO strategy. I realize how weird that sounds because most people wouldn't think that like opening a new office should have anything to do with SEO. We like tell our clients, like, don't go buy an office. Don't go like rent a new office without us checking it first. Like, we do like thorough checks. I check to see like, is the office within city limits? Is it close to the city center? Yes, all these things help with ranking. Is there another business at that address already that competes with you? Is there an area where you're going to be able to have proper signage that, you know, will keep you in Google's good graces? So yeah, there's lots of reasons why you want to do a deep dive into a location before, but I realize after the fact that that's a little more painful. Yeah. But I would still tell your client this location is not going to work. Like, there's no fix for a Regis that is going to help you, because even if you manage to get it reinstated, it's probably going to get suspended down the road.
Yeah.
And this was an interesting tip here from one of our viewers. Google has internal programs like SimCity. They know where PO boxes are, virtual offices, and office parks. They most certainly do. They are aware of these types of addresses. So I've heard one of the other product experts was telling me that he's seen listings get suspended from just being like across the street from a PO box. Like, Google's wrongly associated it with the USPS or whatever that's there. All right, we might have time for like one more, Liz. I think you have one more example on the list here that we can cover.
Yeah, I have a good one that's different from what we've been talking about. It involves an account level suspension.
Oh, yeah, we haven't talked about that, so that's great.
Yeah. So this business, they had access, or this user had access to multiple listings for a business that had just multiple addresses, and all of the listings got suspended. They managed to get, I think, 5 of them reinstated, but there were 2 they were unable to get reinstated. So I'm assuming they were able to like remove the user from the other 5 that was causing the account level restriction, but they weren't aware that removing that user is what they needed to do to get all the profiles reinstated. So I was able to send them this link that you can actually check to see if your Google account is restricted by Google for any reason. And if it is, then any Google listing that account has access to is at risk of suspension. And if that listing, or if that user account is on a suspended listing, that listing will not get reinstated. So they were able to get reinstated right after removing that user from those 2 accounts. But they did also have to provide a ton of proof for those locations, because the one business had multiple locations. So anytime a business has multiple locations, I always advise that you have proof for each location. So whether that be like a license, like an LLC document, a doing business as certificate is good, but you do need to have that address on that piece of proof, because Google is going to require proof of the address itself, not just proof the business exists. So if you can't provide a piece of proof or 2 for each address, you're not going to get every profile reinstated.
For sure. And I had Richard share that in the chat. So that link you're referring to, if you want to see if it's your profile. And it's a nightmare. I actually remember at the agency I used to work for, we had an account level suspension once where, like, I want to say 30 clients got suspended all on the same day. It was a nightmare. And I helped a guy recently who was in the same boat. Like, he was an agency owner And this is why I advocate for the agency dashboard. I haven't heard anybody using the agency dashboard have an account level suspension. I don't know if you have, Liz, but I've never heard of one. The ones I usually hear of are like Gmails. They have this random obscure Gmail and Google just suspends it because they don't know anything about you. Like anybody can set up a Gmail, whereas like our agency account is set up using, sterlingsky.ca email addresses. Google knows exactly who we are and what we're doing and who we're working with. And there's lots of transparency there. And as long as you're not looking to hide anything from Google, the agency dashboard would be the best way that I would suggest keeping your listings set up so that you avoid account level suspensions, because you certainly don't want to have all those listings get suspended on the same day. Pretty awful.
No. And I love your tip about not using a Gmail, because it's not something that everyone knows you can do, even if you don't have like your domain email set up with Google. Like there are a lot of businesses that use other email platforms like Microsoft, Outlook. You can still set up a Google Workspace account or a Google account with that domain email. You just kind of have to go through a couple extra steps to use an existing domain email. But in my opinion, if you have a lot of listings that you're managing for your business, it's definitely worth it to go through that process to be able to manage them with a domain email.
Yeah, for sure. Good tip. All right, we'll end here with just a couple questions. If anyone wants to squeeze one in last minute, we might have time, but I've got two queued up here. So if you share an office with somebody that has a completely different business, friend has a travel agency, I'm in marketing, and you have your own desk with internal signage, what do you think, Liz? Doable?
It's doable if you set it up like completely right. Like you need if you want your address showing, you need signage, you need a separate entrance. Like internal signage is, in my opinion, not going to cut it. Like you really do need like that external signage someone can see from the street. If it's two service area businesses, it's just really tricky to get Google to verify. So I would probably advise against it, especially if you're creating a brand new listing and your friend is already an established travel agent at that address. Google is just probably not going to verify that profile.
Yeah, you just make sure that the extra income you're getting from it is worth the risk, right? Because like by letting somebody into your address, you're actually like putting yourself a little bit higher risk.
Yeah.
So something always to kind of consider. But I would say if they're different business types, technically they qualify. Like there's nothing, against the guidelines, but the one business is probably going to have issues with documentation if they get suspended because they're not going to have utility bills in their name. It's going to be in the other business's name. So there's lots of things that I think are going to make it harder. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, get an LLC, make sure it has that address on it. Like everything you have business-wise should have the address that you're trying to verify. That can make it a little easier. But again, if you're hiding your address, I don't think it's going to necessarily work out in the long run.
All right, last question, and then I know we're at time. I'm in India. I do remote services on computer support and IT support. I'm guessing that's supposed to be IT support to get video verification approval. That's the only option it shows me. How to get approval? Oh, man.
We have a nice article about how to get how to pass a video verification as a service area business. So Carrie, definitely link to that. But you're going to want to show any proof that you're actually doing business in that area. So like signs that you're maybe putting out for your customers, business cards, tools of the trade. So like your computers that you're using to do that IT support, things like that. It sounds like it might be a little tricky because I don't know what kind of proof you're going to be able to provide, but it's really just proving to Google that you are doing the work you say you're doing in the area you say you're doing it.
For sure. All right. Well, as usual, we'll be doing one of these every month. So until next time, see you guys later.
Thanks, guys.